good fit. Now, the seminar today is primarily for people that do not have PDM and are wondering, should I get PDM or not? So I'm going to explore some of the scenarios where PDM makes sense. If you're already using PDM, you might pick up a couple tricks, but really it's for more of an introduction to the topic, really. So, as I was saying, I want to walk through a few scenarios where PDM might be of use. So, let's go through these scenarios. So first of all, I'm going to talk about one scenario that is very common that we get all the time, both Joel and I, is there's too much time spent searching for documents. Actually, there's a study that I read not too long ago that says that about 2 hours a day is spent searching for things, for documents, for files, and that's typical. So what are the causes that lends itself to having too much time spending for searching for those documents? So there's a few reasons. First of all, many people just store their files on network drives, and then on those network drives, it lends itself really poorly, if you want, for searching. So what I mean by that is, Windows search capabilities is fairly limited and also time consuming. And we'll see how PDM can help with that. The other thing too is that documents are not centralized in a controlled area. So people store their files on network drives, some of the files on a local drive, there might be different drives for different types of people within the company. For example, engineering has a drive, manufacturing has a drive, purchasing has a drive, and then files just get, a little tangled in between all of those areas. Now, another thing we see quite often is that documents need to be recreated because they've been misplaced or mistakenly deleted. Ask yourself, if you're a SolidWorks user, how many times have you opened up an assembly to get a prompt saying, hey, SolidWorks can't find this file. Do you want me to search for it? Do you want to tell me where it is? Now, again, what are the causes for that? There's no structured way to store and retrieve the data. So if you're a SolidWorks user, you know really well that SolidWorks needs to have a certain path. So it's looking for the file in a certain place. If you rename the file or move the file and you didn't do it properly, SolidWorks is going to be kind of mixed up, won't be able to find it. Also, when you store documents on network folders, there's no effective way to control who can delete, rename, and move the file. So Windows has basically two levels of rights. Either you can read only or read and write. You cannot go specifically and say, hey, that person or that group of person can rename and move files, but they're not able to delete them. There's no way to do that in Windows. So it makes it really hard. One of the things we see quite often is that remote design locations are not receiving updates of the design change. So specifically, if you have offices in different physical locations, but even within the same building, you might have different departments, and you need to send files across those departments. The most common one is a PDF for manufacturing, right? So again, what are the causes to these types of problems? Well, if you're in a separate physical location, usually the physical location will have their own set of data on their own local servers, on their local area network. And then the sites don't have access to each other's data. So there's also a lot of replication going on, because if I can't find it here, I'm not going to trouble myself trying to find it on another server. I'll just recreate it. And people just simply forget to notify others of changes. Even internally, how often does someone inside the company is not aware that there's been a change on some of their design they've been working on by someone else? Happens all the time. Also, probably another one, the fourth scenario that we see quite often is that people have to do a lot of rework. They scrap a lot of stuff and they have to rework simply because in manufacturing they didn't get the right version of the drawing. And it could be within the company or it could be for a supplier. I sent an email to my supplier saying there's a new revision. He just didn't get to see the email, and he manufactured the old one. So so stuff comes in the shop, through the door at receiving, it's not even manufactured right. So we have to start over again. Again, what are the causes for such things to happen? There's no way to control versions and revisions automatically. Everything is manual. We see a lot of companies, people doing, save as copy _rev B, rev C, or they keep a PDF, to get, to track history. And also, there's no good way to control who has access to the old versions. So probably one thing you don't want to do is give access to manufacturing to people in manufacturing, give them access to old revisions. Because if you do, there's a chance there actually will be manufacturing the old version or old revision. And the other thing too is that the stakeholders, the people concerned by change, are simply not notified. They don't know what happened. So if they don't know, you don't know what you don't know. So, and that happens all the time. Now, how can we fix some of those issues with PDM? So I'm going to cover, 6 functionality, let's say, that talks about how we can control all that information. So first, we're going to take a look at PDM, see how we can first centralize and secure the data. We're going to talk about simple organization. We're going to see how we can use the search capabilities within PDM, much more advanced than Windows, and also how we can control revisions. Then we're going to talk about collaboration with other departments, but even for people outside the company, people traveling or suppliers. We're going to then see how the PDM can actually be part of the whole process. For example, ECOs and ECM, change orders, change notice, typical process that we integrate PDM into. And then see how we can automate all the different tasks an engineer has to do day in and day out. So let's start first with the secure and centralized data. So let's jump into PDM real quick, see how we can control all of that data in that secure and central environment. So when you're inside of PDM, you'll notice that all the data is in that central location you need to log in to get into. No login, no access. Now you see that all my engineering data is stored there, but it's still in the Windows environment. So if I need to create a new project or a new folder, right click, and I simply start a new project. Now in that project, I want to add components that were sent by a supplier via email. So I simply do a drag and drop, typical Windows operation. And once I do my check-in, this actually gives visibility to everyone in my team to those files, because everyone's looking at the same vault, at the same centralized data. So everyone has access to everything. And I even have access, whether I'm a SOLIDWORKS user or not, I have access to a full 3D preview of all my SOLIDWORKS files. So again, it's very easy to see everything in there. If I'm looking for something, well, PDM also captures all the metadata information in each of the files. So I can even search on, a portion of a number, for example. That's not even in the file name. It's actually in the properties of that file. If I search for it, I can see the preview real quick. Gives me a good idea of what I'm looking for. So very quickly, you can control that information and secure it within PDM. Now, what about organizing all of that information? Oftentimes you want to move files around, rename, and things like that. So let's see how we do that in PDM. Now, typically, if I have a SOLIDWORKS assembly, in PDM, like I was saying earlier, we can capture all that information, right? So we call this the data card that's actually exposing all of the information about the file. But we're exposing much more than that. You want to get a bill of material? Well, there it is. You don't even need to do a drawing. The bill of material, it can be captured from the assembly level. But we're also exposing all of the contains, so what is inside that assembly and where this assembly is being used. So very quickly, I'm able to see where this file sits in my whole architecture, let's say. Now, if you want to rename a file, very quickly, you select it and you rename it as you would rename any other Windows document. Now, typically, you would never do that on a SOLIDWORKS file. Not that way. You would have to open it, rename it inside of SOLIDWORKS. But if the files are in PDM, we don't care. PDM takes care of the relationships. I want to move files to another folder, copy paste or cut paste. And I simply move them around just like I would in Windows. Again, you would never do that in regular Windows architecture. And you see that even if I moved and renamed files, when I get to SOLIDWORKS, SOLIDWORKS knows because the PDM system is telling SOLIDWORKS where the files are. So there's no more can't find this file or things like that. So organizing all of the information is just so simple with PDM, because you can leverage the basic Windows functionality that you wouldn't be able to do inside of a regular Windows structure if you didn't have PDM. Now, what about search and revision control? Like I said earlier, when you're inside Windows Explorer, you have to, search is not easy. You can search unlimited information. Well, with PDM, it's much easier. So for example, I want to add a component to this assembly. I'm going to browse and I'm going to search inside of PDM. And I'm going to search on a description, not a file name. So very easily, I'm able to capture, and I see in my search result, there's one file that's obsolete, the other one is released. I want to grab that one. I say open. Obviously, I'm taking the one that's released because I don't have to, have it approved already. It's already approved for manufacturing. So using some simple, SOLIDWORKS technique, I'm going to add it. But the search goes way beyond that. I can actually search for things inside of configuration. So for example, I've got a lot of different bolts here, but I'm looking for a bolt that has a M5 size to it. Well, the search capability will expose that inside of PDM Professional. So here's my bolt with my M5 configuration. Again, I'm going to use simple SOLIDWORKS techniques to put it in place. And there's my assembly. I just need to save it at this point and continue my work. Now I'm going to switch to the drawing because the drawing updated, obviously, a couple of components I've added. And with the integration right inside of SOLIDWORKS, I can then check in. And again, when I do a check-in, it's basically exposing the latest version of that assembly and drawing to everyone in my team. But what PDM is also doing in the back end is that it's capturing the history information of that assembly. So if I want to roll back to an earlier version, an as-built earlier version, it's that easy. I say, show me that version of my assembly, and there it is. I don't even need to close SOLIDWORKS. I can do it right inside of SOLIDWORKS. I want to get back to the latest version. I simply select my latest version, and there we go. Here's my latest version of that assembly. And at this stage, I could say that I want to have this document approved by my engineering manager. PDM understands all the files that need to be pushed to the engineering manager, but will also notify the person or persons responsible for approving this document. So again, there's a lot of things that happen with SOLIDWORKS. So you can search much more efficiently with PDM because all the content is indexed. But the control the automatic control of revision is also done automatically by the system. Now let's talk about collaboration. How do we communicate with other people inside or outside our company using PDM? So going back to my drawing here, I noticed that we should make a change to that to make it lighter. So I'm going to start a change request, and that change is only going to apply to the drawing and assembly. And I'm going to say in my change request what we need to do. Now, for that, I'm actually going to leverage some of the capabilities with PDM Professional, and that's eDrawing. eDrawing gets installed with PDM Professional, and within eDrawing, I can actually use eDrawing as a markup or redlining tool. So, for example, in eDrawing, I'm going to say, hey, I want to make this lighter. So for someone that's not using SOLIDWORKS, that is not a SOLIDWORKS designer, they could use eDrawings to do markups and communicate that intent to the actual engineers and designers. Once I've done my markup, I'm simply going to add a comment that I added some red lines, some comments to the eDrawing. And now I'm going to say, I want to change that document and submit for a change and say, please review this document and take a look if we can apply these changes based on my red line and markup. And then from here, if I go back up to my document folder, we'll see that we can also communicate with other people, either inside or outside, using different systems, different CAD systems. So for example, I might have a lot of DWG file, or I even might have another department or a supplier that's not even using SOLIDWORKS, they're using Inventor. Regardless, we can work with all these files and collaborate on that project, even though they're not using the same CAD platform we are. When I check in all this information, you'll see that the preview even supports the files. The references for Inventor and the DWG files are respected as well. And even if I want to view the 3D model, the viewer is available where you can view even files that aren't coming from other systems than from SOLIDWORKS. So here's my DWG files. I can preview them. Everything is available, even Microsoft documents, easily available. Now, if you're working outside, so if you have to step out, or if you want to have or give access to people outside the company, you can also do that through a web portal. So we have the web portal available with PDM Professional, so you can navigate all the documents, but that web portal is also mobile optimized. So if you're just using a phone, that's can also be done easily with a mobile web portal. So now we saw how we can collaborate within the company and even with outside suppliers using different files and different CAD files. But what about integrating the processes of the company? Here we're going to take a look at an example using a ECO or ECN, engineering change order or engineering change notice, and see how that process can integrate into PDM, even though the process might be based on like Word document, for example. So remember that I submitted a change and I want to start a new engineering change. So using a template, it's going to prompt me for a simple form that I fill in. Once I fill that in, it creates my Word document, and I want to attach the Word document to the actual CAD file that it relates to. So I'm actually building a reference between two completely separate documents. So now the ECN or ECO is actually tied or linked to my SOLIDWORKS files. Now, this is a Word file, as you can see, and I can see that the link is propagated, so there's no way I can lose track of this file. I know exactly where it is with reference to my CAD file. Now, let's go in and edit this Word document to add more content. First of all, notice on top, there's already information filled in based on the information when I created that document. And I want to, fill in the description. And even with Microsoft Office, we have the integration right into Microsoft Office. So I can check in my document inside Microsoft Office. And once I checked it in, I can then continue and even capture history of that document. So the history is captured for every document that are in my system. So when I initiated that document, there wasn't any information in the description field. See, it's blank. So that's my first draft of the document. If I get to the latest version of this document, here I got my document with all the information pertaining to that engineering change. When I'm going to check it in, I'm prompted again to fill in some more information if I need to. But now my document is captured, it's in the vault, it's in my system, it's exposed to everyone. And now I need to check it in because I'm done filling out my ECO form, ECN form. And now I'm going to submit it for a change or for approval. So I'm able to create those documents, but maybe I don't have the rights or the power, let's say, to approve them. In this case, I do. So I'm going to approve this document. And as you see, my files went from a release state to a work in process state. So with the integration, we can integrate company processes within PDM. And this is one of the most common ones, is the engineering change order, that we integrate directly inside of the PDM system. Now, next, I want to talk about automation. Again, something that engineers really love about the system is that it's hands-off. It does a lot of things for you. So let's take a look. So first of all, I need to replace that part with a new one. So I'm going to, I build a configuration here, that slider. And, weight is a critical issue or critical part of my design. Now, before I implement these changes, I want to see where this is going to impact. And I realize that sprocket is used in many different assemblies. So it's going to be safer that I make a copy rather than a revision. I don't want a revision to affect all those other assemblies. So I make a copy, and see, PDM actually gives me the next part number. I don't even have to look it up or type in something. PDM is going to give me the next part number. Then when I commit to that part number, PDM is going to say, oh, are there any properties you want to change? I don't have to go into the SOLIDWORKS properties. I can do it from my data card. Once I save those changes to my assemblies, I'm going to, again, update everything and save it. And we'll see some more of the automation. So in the drawing, before we release that drawing, I'm going to get rid of the markup. We don't need those anymore. And inside PDM, I've done doing my changes. So I'm going to check it in to, save or implement those changes. I'm going, like I said, check it in, and then I'm going to release it or approve it. Now, I could submit it for approval if I don't have the rights to do it, and that's what I'm doing here. So I'm going to, submit to my engineering manager for approval, because in many cases, designers or engineers don't have the right to release documents for manufacturing. Someone else has to look over them. And now if I go back to my vault, we can see that we have my documents pending approval. It's listed right there. We can see that. My ECO has been approved though. So from the ECO, I'm going to say design approved. So, and it's automatically going to see that my ECO is tied to my drawing, that's in turn tied to my assembly. So once I approve the ECO and it's implemented, you see that my drawings have been released. They've been uprevved to Rev B, and even a PDF file has been made automatically for manufacturing. So all of this was done in the back end automatically. And oh, by the way, notifications went out as well to people that were concerned about this change. Now here's another example for automation. When you want to create a new project, you can use templates to create new projects. So when you create a new project, all of the structure inside the project is created automatically. You can even create documents automatically tied to those projects. So there's a lot of automation you can do with PDM, one of the nice benefits of that. So if we recap a little bit about what we just saw. So PDM is a central area where all the data gets in, but it's also secured. And there's multiple levels of security, not like Windows. It's simple organization. You want to rename a file, you want to move a file, you want to do something to the file, you can, as much as you have the rights to do it. And oh, by the way, if you just rename or move a file, we actually track we audit that. There's actually, you can see who moved a file or who renamed the file, where it was moved from and where it's moved to. So we track everything inside of PDM. The search capabilities is amazing because all of the information, all of the information about all the files is indexed. So when you search for something, you can search for very granular results. So for example, I'm looking for a part description that it was approved between this date and that date by this person. So you can do the search very granularly, and all the control, everything is revised automatically and controlled automatically. We talked a little bit about collaboration, how we can share all of the information within the company and collaborate on the same projects. But even outside, or companies that have separate remote offices can collaborate on the same system. Everything is, like I said, centralized. You can integrate your processes. We saw a good example with a change order or change notice, engineering change. So all of those processes can be integrated automatically inside the PDM system. And I said automatic probably too much times already, but the automation is huge. Notifications sent automatically, PDF files created automatically, project structures, projects created, part numbers delivered, all of that stuff gets so much, gets the engineer to focus on what he should be focusing on, engineering. So if we go back to our few examples we kind of talked earlier. So remember up front, at the beginning I said some of the cases Joel and I see all the time. People spend too much time searching for documents. Well, the solution with PDM is now you have a central area, a central vault, and it's a secure vault. We call this a vault for good reasons because it's secured. And all of the information is captured in there. But everything that's in the vault is also searchable on all the different documents attributes. So it makes things a lot easier to find the information we need. Also, I mentioned something earlier that documents need to be recreated because they've been misplaced or mistakenly deleted. Well, with PDM now, the standard Windows move, cut, paste, copy can be used without breaking file relationships. If you don't have PDM and you're working off of a network folder and you do some of those, something's going to go wrong with your SOLIDWORKS files. And you probably have already experienced that by now. So with PDM takes care of all the relationships between the file. Plus, we have a lot better control about who can do what in PDM. Like I said, in Windows, it's basically read-only or read and write. If you give read and write to someone, they can do basically everything. In PDM, you can actually control who can rename, who can move files, and maybe those two persons that can rename and move cannot delete files. So there's actually a lot of control and granular control based on responsibilities that you can implement with PDM. It's a lot easier to do that. Also, we mentioned, that remote design locations are not receiving the updates on design change. True if you're on two physical sites, right? We have companies now spread across the world. designs being done and manufacturing being done across the world. Well, with PDM now, you can replicate the data locally. So there's a difference between replicate and copying data. If you're copying data, you're just copying data, it's not controlled. If you're replicating data, yes, the data is available locally, but there's a central brain that knows who's working on what file. And if someone does a change here, the person in China will know of it because the system kind of takes care of mirroring the files so that you have access to the latest revisions or versions. But you also get real-time updates, something we didn't get to see really much in those videos. But when you do a change and someone needs to get informed of it, the system does that for you. You don't even have to start, Outlook. The system will send an email or a notification to the person or persons involved in that change. And like I said, notification via email, there's actually two types of notification. Email is one of them. But the important thing is that people get informed when a change has taken place. We talked about rework and scrap. Usually when a company gets caught scrapping something really expensive because they didn't manufacture the right version or revision, that prompts a lot of internal meetings and questions and say, how did that happen? Well, with PDM, you can do away with that headache because all the versions and revisions are controlled and done automatically. But also, you can control the access of those documents based on the user rights and the life cycle state. And when I mean life cycle, if it's a product that's in design and progress, it hasn't been approved yet, people in manufacturing, for example, won't even get to see it. Only when the document is approved for fabrication or manufacturing, someone on the shop floor gets a notification that says, hey, we're now ready to start manufacturing this file. So I think that wraps up a little bit. Hopefully that wraps up well our presentation today. Thank you for attending. I'm going to leave it to Joël to do give the last words of wisdom.
Thank you, Michel. All right, great information as always. And this is a recorded webinar, as all of ours are, and you can find them at this page. If you take the barcode there, you'll be able to find them. So don't hesitate to share this with others who may need to see this. That may be the next step for you in your company to see where this goes and what happens. Obviously, in these webinars, we can't cover every single aspect and details of the solutions that we're presenting. We're trying to give you an overview, give you food for thought, get you to see, what may be a good fit and a good solution for your company. So again, it could be saving you time. It could be saving you money. If you're saving time, you're saving money. It all goes together. It could be saving money in terms of reworks and other things. So there's a lot of potential with PDM. It doesn't sound like it when people first think about data management, but that is the scenario, and we hope that we've illustrated that clearly for you today. So don't hesitate to share. If you have specific questions or you want to see how this could be applied to your company, you can definitely reach out to us or obviously to your reseller. Who would be more than happy to come have that conversation with you to take you to the next step. And hopefully you've gotten some information from this. Stay with us. There's a video that shows a customer talking about how they implemented PDM and what it did for them. So this may be a good opportunity for you to just see in a few minutes what differences it has made in real life for a real customer. And with that, we thank you, and we hope to see you on another webinar another day. Thanks. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.